do I age well? It's something I often ponder on. My name's Rosaria Barretto, and I want to find out what it takes to live a healthy and happy life as we age. I'm a clinical exercise specialist, and for the past 5 years, I've worked with nearly 1,000 older adults, and as a result, have had the chance to talk to a diverse range of happy and healthy, and not so happy and healthy people in their 70s, 80s, and 90s. And I want to know what it takes to be able to look back and confidently say, I lived an amazing life. Why not join me on this exploration on what it takes to live happily and healthily and learn how to age well?
Hi there, my name is Kamalyn and I am a psychotherapist and an anxiety expert, and I help high achievers overcome anxiety so that they can feel good about themselves and enjoy life feeling fulfilled from within. So I have over a decade of experience in psychotherapy, over which time I have worked with a range of organizations and individuals to help them understand anxiety, to help them identify triggers, and to use practical and effective strategies to be able to deal with that anxiety.
Amazing. So I think the first question that we're going to discuss today is all around anxiety around milestone birthdays. I know that, for example, when I've had discussions with other people, they say, I'm really not enjoying my birthday this year because I don't want to feel older. I've had a lot of anxiety around getting older. I feel like I've potentially wasted time or getting closer to that end point in life, depending on where you are on the spectrum. But I think most people after 30, when you've reached those 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and 100 milestones, they're dealing with a lot of negativity in their mindset around that. So maybe you can tell me a little bit more about how we deal with that and why we experience those thoughts and those anxieties.
Okay, because so I think the first thing is to identify what the issue actually is, because that milestone birthday fear, there can be so many reasons for that. So the first thing is it because you are not where you imagine to be at that age or stage in your life, right? Is it that there is a life event going on in that particular moment in time? Like, are you maybe going through divorce? Are you going through menopause? Are you going through a work restructuring? Are you going through some major life event that you maybe didn't anticipate or plan for to take place around about that time? A fear of dying is a big thing as well. You know, a lot of people out there, they're worried about getting old and they're worried about what that represents getting older. It's like facing their mortality as well. So that could be a potential trigger. And some people just don't want to get old. And I don't blame them, because right now in social media, you're constantly bombarded with messages of how to stay young, how to look a certain way, how to be a certain way, how successful you should be, how you should be living your life, how you should be leading your lifestyle. So there's a lot of noise out there, and sometimes we can maybe measure ourselves, our self-worth, our successes, our achievements negatively against the outside world, which can lead to a lot of anxiety when it comes to certain milestones, because maybe you feel inadequate in comparison to other people. Maybe you feel that you're not as successful as what you should be, because there's a lot of societal expectations there that are put onto us, whether we know it or not. Maybe you're not living your life according to the family morals or ethics that you have been raised in. Maybe they expected you to be at a certain point in your life. Maybe they thought you would be doing different things, and maybe you're not, you know. So there can be a lot of external factors that can affect how you feel about a birthday. So I think the main thing is to identify what is your trigger, like, because it's not the birthday. The birthday is actually the thing that's bringing it to light. There's something else going on underneath the surface, and that doesn't just happen on the day of your birthday. That'll be there brewing for quite a long time. The birthday just brings everything to the surface. So it is about identifying, okay, what is this birthday? What is it triggering inside me? What is it the fear of any of those things that I've mentioned? And once you identify the issue or the trigger, it usually makes it a little bit easier to start working through with it, because then you can rationalize whatever's going on, and you can rationalize the thought or the fear that's going on in your head. If you can't identify it, you can't rationalize it.
Yeah, I totally relate to that, because I think for me personally, I experience this worry around, have I done enough in my life? You know, it's that success element of achievement and have I done enough by the time I'm 30? Have I done enough by the time I'm 40? Should I be living this way or should I be living that way? And I think that pressure that society puts on us that you explained earlier has a massive responsibility when it comes to people's thought process and the way that we as individuals cope with dealing with anxiety. And I think it kind of goes both ways with that age or that reaching that milestone. And that's obviously not the problem, but society has said by the time that you're 50 you should have a house, you should maybe have some children, you should be in a successful career. And it's all about that comparison, I guess, which so relatable. So if we're coming up to a milestone birthday, or we're somebody who knows that we are affected by birthdays, how can we, or what can we do in our daily life in that lead up to help cope with the worry and the anxiety around what's about to happen? And then from that, let's say we've experienced an anxiety episode that's associated to this milestone birthday. What can we do after? So there's two elements to this question. Pre-anxiety, expecting that anxiety to happen, and then during the anxiety, like what can we do to recover and heal and prevent that from happening again in the future?
Yeah. Okay. So the pre-anxiety, what I would say there is that a lot of the time, anxiety can come from us focusing on what we haven't yet achieved or accomplished, right? Because what that does is it creates feelings of inadequacy within us, and it makes us feel like we failed. And the more you look at what you don't have and how far you still have to move forward, or how far you still have to go before you reach your goals in life, the more anxious and the more unsettled you're going to feel in yourself. And also the thing is, it's not an accurate depiction of your life, because when you do that, you're almost sending a subliminal message to your subconscious brain saying, I've not done anything. And that's not true. I don't believe you get to 30 or 40 or 50 without doing anything in your life, right? Yes, you might not have achieved what you wanted to in your life, but there's probably a good reason why you haven't. You might have been raising a family, you might have been pursuing a career, you might have been traveling the world, you might have just wanted to go at your own pace, and that's perfectly okay. You know, like nobody dictates that pace other than you, because it's you that's living your life. So the thing is, it's really important to stop and sometimes look back the way instead of constantly looking forward, and acknowledge all of your milestones that you've achieved up until now. Write them down, make a list of everything you've done in your life. And it doesn't always have to be tangible things, you know, like things that you've earned or money that you've made or jobs that you've done. You can also make a list of experiences. What have you learned about yourself as an individual up until this point in life? What experiences have you had? What relationships have enriched your life? Or what relationships have come and given you a big jolt and made you actually wake up to the reality of what's going on? There'll be so much you will have done up until that milestone birthday, and it's really important to acknowledge that. So I guess as a psychotherapist, the first thing I would do is you need to shift your mindset. Stop focusing on everything you haven't yet achieved and start looking at what you have been doing up until this point. So that's the first thing. So what that does is it restores that balance, right? Because when you have anxiety is usually, there's usually an indication that something's off balance, right? So this is one of the quickest ways that you can restore your balance. And the second thing is you have to be realistic about it. You're not going to do this exercise once and then all of a sudden you snap out of like whatever you're going through, because you didn't get to that stage overnight. You've got to that stage by years and years of constantly telling yourself that what you're doing is not enough. So it's going to take a while to reprogram that mind back to the way it should be. So it's really important to stick to these exercises and be consistent. The second thing is keep a gratitude journal. It's really important to start noting what you've been doing during the day. It's so easy to get to the end of the day and think, oh, I never got a chance to do this, and I've just been running my tail all day and I've not been able to achieve this, and I was supposed to get all this done and I've not even managed to make a start on that list. But then why don't you just acknowledge what you have done? And even those small incremental acknowledgements at the end of the day, they all start adding up, you know? And the third thing that does is it allows you to appreciate what you do have. There's so many things we take for granted, like getting up in the morning and breathing, right? Being able to get up and actually just walk across There's people out there that can't do that. They might need help to get up in the morning. They might need a wheelchair to be able to wheel themselves out of one side of the bedroom to the other, right? I know this is a really extreme example, but a lot of the things that we do, we take for granted, whereas for somebody else, that might be a luxury altogether, right? Or it might be a rarity in itself. So it's really about acknowledging what you do have and appreciating what you have. If you don't appreciate what you've got, you're never going to get more of anything, because it's like, why would the universe give you anything if you can't even appreciate what you've actually got at this point in time? So it is about all those mindset shifts, right? Even just small changes like this, what they do is it helps you to alleviate that overwhelming feeling that usually leads to anxiety. The second thing I would say is, in reference to what you were saying, if you are experiencing anxiety, that's where you end up identifying the trigger and you rationalize the trigger. So if you're sitting there and the thought that's making you feel anxious is that, oh my God, I've come to the end of my life and I've not done anything, blah, 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 really like stop and check yourself. How accurate is that thought? How realistic is that thought? And also, are those any of those things that you feel like you're missing out on? Are they even things that you want to do, or are you just doing them because you feel like you should be doing them, right? And this is a big thing that I actually work with when I'm working with clients, asking them to use the compass of shoulds versus wants, right? Anytime you're doing something, ask yourself the question, am I doing this because I want to, or am I doing this because I feel like I should? Anytime you engage in an activity that involves you having to do a should, it's going to create anxiety. Maybe not instantly, but it starts building up, because now you're not living your life based on your own expectations. You're living your life based on the expectations of your family members, your culture, your country that you're living in, and society that you're bombarded by. So these are the things that then start gradually building up anxiety. So it's really important during the midst of anxiety to actually check in with yourself and ask yourself the question of, what is this thing that I feel I'm missing out on? And is it really me missing out, or do I just think I'm missing out on it based on the messages that I'm getting? And then the other thing is, like, obviously managing your physical symptoms, like breathing exercises, like deep relaxation, progressive muscle relaxation, meditation, yoga, anything that slows your body down and helps you to just connect with your breath. It allows you to check in with your body, and it allows you to appreciate what's going on inside your body.
Brilliant. I mean, I have to go back a little bit because I want to understand more about gratitude journals. I have tried to write a gratitude journal in the past because I'm somebody who experiences anxiety, and it's something that I've talked about on the podcast before, but I don't get along with writing. It's not just writing a gratitude journal. I just don't enjoy writing things down. And I found that really hard in the past. So firstly, what is a gratitude journal and what does that look like? And kind of how do we approach that if it's something that is completely new to us? And then secondly, if writing a gratitude journal just isn't working, are there alternative options?
Okay, so a gratitude journal, first of all, it's basically, it doesn't have to be a journal. It could be anywhere. It could literally be a notebook, or it could be Post-its, right? Somewhere where you take out 5 minutes in your day. And I don't believe that nobody has 5 minutes, right? 5 minutes in your day to acknowledge what you are grateful for, right? And again, it doesn't have to be big things. It could be small things like, I'm grateful for a healthy body. I'm grateful for a body that heals. I'm grateful for being able to move, right? I'm grateful for being able to have another chance at life today. It could be anything, right? So it's about acknowledging what you're grateful for in that moment. And what that does is, you acknowledging what you're grateful for, it starts to reprogram your mind. It creates neural pathways in your brain that allow you to be appreciative of what you've got, which then affects how you feel about yourself. So instead of feeling inadequate or feeling as though you're failing, it starts making you think about your life and look at your life from a place of like complete gratitude and appreciation and acceptance for what you actually have. So that's basically all it is. And it doesn't have to be like a big, huge, long journal. Like I said, it could literally be 3 bullet points that you're doing. And if you don't like writing things down, it doesn't matter. You're never going to look back. I don't know anybody that sits there and looks back at day 1 of their gratitude journal, right? So as long as you take it 5 minutes, even if you get to the end of your day, 5 minutes, close your eyes and just identify 3 things that you are grateful for that day, right? That's it. So you don't have to write it down, because It's just the process of acknowledging what you have. That's all it is. So it could be written, or it could be just a mental check-in that you're doing with yourself.
So I guess saying, I'm really grateful for being able to live until the age of 50, or I've experienced such an amazing life so far, and I'm so grateful that I've got to live that life. They're the types of things that would potentially resonate with somebody that's experiencing milestone anxiety.
Yeah. But also it's about being realistic as well. So I'm a big realist, right? So I'm not really into like a big positivity thing. Although I think it's important to have a positive mindset, I do think that there's sometimes things happen in our life which we can't really be positive about, right? And we have to accept the reality of the situation, which might not always be pleasant. So say, for example, you might not be in the peak of your health, right? So it's going to be hard for you to say, I am so happy for my body, because you might absolutely be completely bereft at the fact that your body can't function the way that it was, right? Functioning. But what are you grateful for? Are you grateful for the fact that there's people in your life that come in and check in on you, right? Are you grateful for the fact that even though you're going through this health condition, you don't have to worry about paying the mortgage because that's already been paid for, right? Or you have enough finance to be able to actually not worry about where your income's coming from, right? Or you still have a roof over your head. So sometimes it doesn't have to be directly about the thing that you are thinking about. It could be other things that maybe make that experience just a little bit less stressful for you in that moment.
Amazing. Okay, I want to kind of change the topic a little bit in terms of does anxiety change as we age? When, let's say, we're coming to the end of our time,
Yeah.
and I mean, this is more of a philosophical question, and there isn't an exact answer. But I think a lot of us think, or would like to know, if they're going through something that's age related, about anxiety, and we look back on our life, can anxiety change as we age, and will anxiety symptoms be different? For example, when you're maybe in your 30s and you're going through a really stressful career experience compared to maybe later on in life and you're going through a health scare.
Mm-hmm.
It's a bit of a challenging question, but is there naturally occurring differences associated to anxiety that happen at different stages of life?
Okay, so the answer to that question is yes, anxiety is different depending on what stage you're at in your life, because the trigger is going to be different. In terms of, are the symptoms different? No, the symptoms are going to be exactly the same. They'll just show up in different ways. That's all, right? Because they'll be triggered off by different things. So say, for example, in your 20s, your main concern might be to find a career, right? Or to find the love of your life, right? Or to look a certain way so that you can fit in with the rest of the crowd, right? So do you see, in your 20s, that's going to be your anxiety. And as like, if you're a teenager, that'll probably be the main things that are on your mind, right? When you get to your 30s, then your anxieties might be triggered off by different things, you know, like certainty, future, career, children, family life, like mortgages, all of that might be on the forefront of your mind. By the time you get to your 40s or your 50s or your 60s, again, your anxieties are going to be different. They might be based on physical appearance, because you may not look the way that you used to look, right? So once again, all the things that we take for granted, now all of a sudden we can't take for granted, because everything requires extra maintenance, right? Face, skin, body, everything we have to work harder for. So the things that we took for granted in our 20s, now we realize actually we have to work to maintain that same kind of a look. The second thing is, when you get to your 40s, 50s, 60s plus, you might have different health concerns that your body's dealing with, you know. So there's a lot of women that will experience peripausal stages, menopausal stages, you know. So that in itself is going to be a different trigger for your anxiety. Also, as you get older, there's a whole like thing about where your family, your children, people that may be dependent on you, they no longer depend on you now, because everybody's going about managing their own families now. So you might be experiencing isolation. You might not feel like there's a need or a purpose for you anymore. Empty nest syndrome, you know, like all of these things are different. So do you see where the anxiety is going to be experienced differently, because the triggers are going to be different as well? So that's what I would say. But how it's going to show up in your body is going to be pretty much the same. Overthinking, overanalyzing, feeling isolated, withdrawing, feeling as though you're excluded from things, physical symptoms in your body, increased heart rate, tummy problems, hot and cold flushes, tingling in your hands, like headaches, like musculoskeletal issues. Like the way it will manifest with anxiety, it manifests in exactly the same way, just the trigger will be different.
So interesting. You briefly mentioned menopause, and I know I don't want to kind of focus on that as a long subject, but
Yeah.
I think it is an important topic to discuss
Yes.
because everybody experiences it. If you're a man and you live with a woman, to a relative who knows somebody going, or a friend that knows somebody who's going through menopause. So I think there's two parts to this. Number one, is anxiety inevitable, or is an inevitable symptom of menopause? And how do we cope with anxiety associated to menopause? I haven't experienced menopause yet. I know people that have. And I think as somebody who knows people that has or is going through menopause, how can we help them more? But how can they help themselves?
Yeah, okay. So anxiety is a really common symptom when it comes to menopause. I actually work with a lot of menopausal women and helping them to manage their anxiety. So 69% of all women that go through menopause, including perimenopausal stages, will experience anxiety. That's a hell of a lot, right? That's a lot. So, and again, the anxiety is going to come from the fear of the unknown, right? And the changes and the transition and the physical changes and the body changes, not being in control of like your hot flushes, not knowing when you're going to experience sleep deprivation. All of these things are going to be the cause of your anxiety. So to answer your first question, it's going to happen, right? It is inevitable, right? You will experience it at some point. But again, once you identify what the trigger is, where is your anxiety coming from? So some of it will be hormonal, right? Because what happens is when we go through menopause, there's a shift in our serotonin levels, there's a shift in our endorphins, and then there's an increase in our cortisol levels in our blood, right? So again, that is just the recipe for anxiety. So there'll be anxiety coming from the hormonal imbalances and shifts that are taking place in your body. But the second thing is there'll be anxiety coming from the change itself and how you're interpreting it and how you feel about that change. And that's what we can manage. That is where we can work with the thoughts that you have, how you interpret that transition, how you translate that into your mind, and changing your thoughts around that experience. The second thing that you can start doing is you're going to start experiencing different emotional needs during that time. So it's really important to be able to communicate those needs effectively. So a lot of the women that I work with, they have high functioning anxiety, which means that they are not very good at communicating their needs because these are women that are very self-reliant. They like to do everything themselves. They like to be in control. They like to be organized, and they like to run the ship, right? Which is fine until you can't. And when you can't do that, this is where there's a massive issue with losing that control of not being able to do what you normally would have done. And a lot of these women, what they'll find is that they are not in the habit of communicating to those around them what they need or asking for help because they're very, very self-reliant. So the biggest struggle is saying, I can't cope, or this is too much for me, or I can't deal with this, or I need help. That usually becomes one of the biggest struggles for women. So being able to identify what's going on in your body and saying, I can't do this anymore, or I don't have the capacity to deal with this, or I actually feel like I'm not going to be able to do X, Y, and Z anymore. That's one of the most important things that you can do for yourself. Accept, right, what your boundaries actually are and what your capabilities are, and then communicating to those around you as well. Because if they don't know, they can't help you. That's the big thing that we actually have to start realizing as well when it comes to menopause. So these are some of the things that we can start paying attention to. The other thing that causes a lot of anxiety is sleep deprivation. If you are not being able to sleep, it's going to feed right into your anxiety. And then that anxiety is going to feed right into your sleep deprivation, because if you're anxious, you're not going to be able to sleep. If you can't sleep, you're going to feel anxious, because naturally we just feel more fragile when we've not had a good night's sleep, especially if it's been going on for weeks and months on end. So managing that anxiety again through physical exercises such as deep breathing, muscle relaxation, progressive muscle relaxation, and actually improving your sleep hygiene as well, so that you are actually creating the optimum conditions to be able to get a good night's sleep. These are all really important factors to start looking at, because it's not that anxiety is not just hormonal. A lot of it will be coming from your mindset as well.
You mentioned breathing quite a lot. And I want to understand why breathing works. I do a lot of breath work personally, and I kind of understand how it works, but I think it's important to discuss more about that, because everybody does say, and it doesn't matter what type of anxiety you're experiencing, do some deep breathing or go and look at some breathing exercises. But what actually, and how does it actually work?
Okay. So what happens with breathing is when you start breathing deeply, not just like, so we get two types of breathing, right? So we are supposed to breathe from our diaphragm, which means that we should be able to feel that movement all the way down to here, right? And that's how babies breathe. But when we become adults, we almost start breathing from the upper part of our chest, right? Which I call chest breaths instead of tummy breaths, right? Now, as soon as you start doing chest breaths, right, your body is now being starved of oxygen because half of your lung capacity is not being used up now, right? So what happens is your body now and every single organ in your body has to work so much more harder to be able to get that oxygen to where it needs to, as opposed to if you were using your full lung capacity, right? So that's the first thing. So if your body's working harder, your mind and body connection is real. If your body is working harder and everything's having to work at a higher pace, because if you've only got half of your capacity of oxygen going into your body, it's like every single organ's like quickly get it before that air goes out, right? So that whole like kind of like that urgency, that restlessness that you experience in your body is going to start showing up in your head. Overthinking, not being able to focus, can't concentrate, brain fog. Like, so your mind and body connection is really real. If you slow everything down your body, which is what deep breathing does, if you slow everything down in your body, your mind follows as well, then everything calms down in your head and you can think clearly. So when you do a breathing exercise, what you're doing is you're reducing your heart rate, you're slowing it down, right? You're slowing down your breathing so that it's deep and it's coming from your diaphragm rather than short, sharp, shallow breaths. And then the third thing is you relax your muscles. Now, when these three things happen together, there's an alarm bell that gets activated in your head normally when you're anxious, and that alarm bell gets deactivated because your brain goes, right, the body's relaxed, the heart rate's back to normal, the muscles are relaxed, and the breathing is calm, and it's not as though I'm running away from any danger, right? So let's stop releasing adrenaline into this body now. As soon as that adrenaline stops to be produced, that is your number one fuel for anxiety. So if that adrenaline's not there, it's going to be really hard for your body to actually experience anxiety. So this is why breathing exercises are really, really important, because it's it's your built-in self-regulation technique and tool that your body has, right? If you want to control any disease in your body, you have to start slowing down your breathing, and you can't have your body constantly working overtime again and again and again, because that's where it always leads to disease, and it leads to your body feeling as though it's running on adrenaline.
And if we've done our breath work, we've done our gratitude journal, we've done our exercise, and we're doing everything that everybody's telling us to do, but we still feel anxious and we're still worried a lot, what's the next level of support that we can find, and how does that work, and what does that look like for mainly for people who haven't ever experienced that extra support that they can get from others?
Okay, so the first thing is, in order to notice any change, you have to do those exercises consistently. So you can't just do a breathing exercise for like a week and be like, oh my God, my anxiety's not got better. So you have to do it religiously, right? The second thing is, if doing all those techniques hasn't helped you, so if by rationalizing your thoughts, deactivating that adrenaline, doing your breathing exercises, writing down like your gratitude journal, if that hasn't made a difference, I guarantee you, right, 95% of the time, it'll be the people in your life that are making you feel anxious. It'll be your partner, it'll be your family dynamics, it'll be your relationship with your mother, it'll be like the trauma that you experienced as a child, right? So it will be unresolved trauma, which is now coming to the forefront. So it's really important to start thinking about, is there anything there, any unresolved trauma or any unresolved grief that maybe now needs your attention? Because if you are in a stage of your life where maybe naturally things are slowing down, any of these life events that you've not had a chance to process, which you may have been able to avoid processing because life was so busy, it will start to resurface when life quietens down. And this is what happened during COVID, right? The number of clients that I seen that had increased anxiety and increased symptoms of anxiety, none of it was coming from like real time events. All of it was coming from previous stuff that had happened, but life keeps you busy. And then as soon as you've got no distractions and nothing to keep you busy, then all of a sudden everybody wants to talk about their childhood. People want to talk about life events. People want to talk about their relationships that are maybe not working, which are easy to avoid when you're busy. So if you feel that by doing the usual techniques, the anxiety hasn't gone away, it's time to really do an honest appraisal of your life and start looking at, is there relationships in your life that maybe contribute towards your anxiety? And then obviously once you've identified it, I think the next common sense step would be to speak to a professional. You cannot work through this stuff yourself, especially if it's deep rooted and it's unresolved trauma. You do need to have a third party there, and you need that third party to be independent, not your family member, not a friend. It needs to be somebody that's qualified to be able to help you in that particular area of your life that you're needing support in. And you can access therapists like privately, you can check online, you can register with the NHS by going through your GP. If you are working, you can actually get employee assistant programs through your jobs these days as well. I won't mention any names for obvious reasons, but you can actually contact your employer and say, is there any employee assistant programs that I can use to be able to access help directly? So there's lots of options available for you at that point onwards.
And when it comes to finding that help, what are things that people should be looking for? Because I'm conscious that not everybody is compatible with somebody else, but you've also got the NHS route, which may suggest that you do some CBT or group therapy, and maybe that's not your thing. What would you advise when it comes to choosing someone who can support you, really unraveling those deep rooted traumas? And how would you, it's kind of like a checklist, I guess, of what you're looking for in that person or what you're looking for in therapy, and how to identify those key areas of importance for that individual.
Yeah, okay. So the first thing is, if you're going through the NHS route, you need to be ready to wait, because you're not going to get a referral straight away. So if you think that something is really, really urgent and it cannot wait, then I would definitely opt for the private route or check the employee assistant programs in your work as well, because through the NHS, for obvious reasons, you will not get seen straight away. And by that point, I guarantee you will have convinced yourself that it's not an issue and I don't need to speak about it, right? So there's no point in even doing that to yourself. The second thing is, when you're looking for a therapist, yes, look for a particular modality. So if you're looking to talk through things, or do you need practical strategies? Are you quite a practical, logical person? So I'm very practical and logical. So I'm not really into like, let's keep going over the same thing again and again in therapy. So a lot of the clients that I get, they're people that are very pragmatic in their approach to life, very logical and realists, and they're looking for strategies. That's what they're looking for. So if that's what you're looking for, then you would, in the initial stages of when you're looking for a therapist, ask them how they work and also tell them what you're looking for. Are you looking for a space to process your emotions, or are you looking for tools and techniques? Because that will help you to find the right fit for you. The third and the most important thing, and I cannot emphasize this enough, right? If you don't like your therapist, it's never going to work. I can tell you that right now. It doesn't matter how good the modality is. It doesn't matter how experienced they are. It doesn't matter what testimonials or reviews that they have. If you don't like them, then that's not going to be a safe space for you. And if it's not a safe space for you, you're going to overthink every single thing that you share with this therapist, and that defeats the purpose of therapy. You should be able to speak to your therapist confidently, openly, and without feeling judged or without feeling cringe or embarrassed about sharing anything with that therapist, right? And you should be looking forward to these therapy sessions as well, where every week you think, right, okay, you know what, I can't wait to unpack this and see what comes up, or I can't wait to ask questions about this. So that's a really important thing. And a lot of therapists now, they offer consultations, they offer like a 10-15 minute consultation, and do it through a video call, do it face to face if you can, because that will give you a sense of whether that person's the right fit for you. If there's anything there that doesn't feel right, don't try and rationalize it. Don't try and convince yourself that, oh, well, this person's got really good reviews. No, just leave it. Because if it's not feeling right at the start, you're just going to find excuses to leave that therapeutic process. And the number of times I've worked with people that will say, I've tried therapy before, but it didn't work for me. That's not the case. You just, either you didn't enter therapy at the right time, so you've entered it when you're not ready for change, or the second thing is you've entered therapy and you've not clicked with your therapist, right? And that third thing that I mentioned about clicking with your therapist, I cannot highlight that enough. It's so important, because if you're sharing things about your personal life and about traumas that you've experienced, you need to feel safe with this person. And in terms of group therapy, I mean, obviously I'm a therapist and I think therapy is good, but I'm not a big advocate for group therapy at all. I don't think that's a very nice space for somebody to go into when they're talking about personal trauma. So I do think a one-to-one session is always better to start off with.
And how do we know if we're ready to experience therapy and kind of enter that next stage of support? I found it really interesting how you mentioned, like, it might not have worked in the past because you're not in the right space, or you're not ready to heal. And I'd love to understand more about that.
Okay. So your body tells you a lot of the time. It's like with anything in life, we sometimes, even if we don't feel ready for it, our mind starts to become preoccupied with it, right? So do you see where, for example, nobody's ready to have a baby? I don't know anybody that's ready for a baby, but the desire starts to take place of, imagine what it would be like to have a baby. It would be nice to have a baby, or I am ready to start thinking about that. It's the same when you purchase a house or you start looking for thinking about changing a job. Even though there might be anxieties there about leaving your comfort zone, there's always that preoccupied thought of, but I really need to see what else is out there. I need to look for it. And the same thing will happen with therapy. So what will happen is you may have experienced a trauma in your life, or you may have experienced some kind of like grief or loss in your life. And you may have been able to put it in a box, compartmentalize it, and just push it to the side. But then there'll come a point in your life where you can't do that anymore, because it's always there in the forefront of your mind, right? So that's your body telling you it's time to start talking about it now. So even if you don't feel ready, this is the phenomenal thing about our body, right? And I'm amazed, and I continue to be amazed by the human body. If you try and block something out, there's only so much you can do that. Your body then starts to communicate to you, and it starts to take over for you, right? And this is exactly what happens with anxiety as well. The symptoms that you experience are not the initial symptoms. That's like usually the end resort of your body telling you that something's not right. And it's the same when it comes to accessing help as well. If you block something out long enough, your body will start to communicate to you and start saying to you, I can't push this aside anymore. It will start to affect your day-to-day functioning. It'll be the first thing you think about and the last thing you think about when you go to bed. And that's when you know it's time to start speaking to somebody about it.
Thank you so much, Kamalyn. I found this so insightful. Being somebody who really struggles with anxiety and experiences waves throughout my life so far of extreme high level anxiety to just general day-to-day anxieties, or kind of triggered anxieties that are quite instant. For example, like knowing that I have to go and present at something, or go and push myself outside of my comfort zone. And I've had to do a lot of work on myself. And one thing that I would really say has benefited me is being grateful and writing down all the things that I'm grateful for, and then learning that off by heart and just saying that to myself in those times of darkness. So thank you so much for helping me personally just remind myself what needs to be done when you are going through those experiences. And also, I think just being so aware about the future for anybody who's not experienced menopause yet, or experiencing it at the moment, and being able to understand the changes that they're going through is really, really important. And I think in those cases, ignorance isn't bliss. It's always better to be in the know about how your body's going to react to these things, what you can do to change it, and what you can do to support your recovery and those next stages of life. But thank you so much. You're amazing. What I would love you to do is just tell us more about where we can find out some more information about you. I think anybody who's going through anxiety, and I think lots of people are, even if they're not willing to accept that they are, may want to have a further conversation with you. So yeah, where can we find out some more information?
Right. So I have joined the social media revolution, haven't I? So I'm on social media. So you will find me on Instagram, and my handle is Kamalyn Kaur. And on that page, you will get lots of reels about how to identify anxiety, how to deal with it, what triggers anxiety, how to manage it effectively, because I am all about using a very practical method with it, right? And I do think that anxiety is natural, but what's not natural is for that anxiety to continuously take over your life. So a lot of the reels that I do is around that kind of particular content. And on that Instagram page, you can also book in for a discovery call if you want to have a one-to-one chat. If you want to help with particular symptoms, you can definitely have a chat. I do complimentary consultations, so it's not a problem at all. And for any women that are high achieving women, such as female entrepreneurs, they've got their own businesses, they're team leaders, they're CEOs, I actually have a Facebook group as well called the Zen Warrior Women, which is all about feeling good from within, because there's a lot of women out there that are successful, that are strong, that are confident, competent, composed, productive, but they still feel inadequate within themselves, and they constantly deal and battle with that persistent worry of not feeling as though they're doing enough or not feeling connected to their achievements. As soon as they achieve something, it's like, right, tick, what next, right? So that group is all about being mindful, being present, and actually connecting what's going on in your outside world to inside you as well, so that you don't feel like you're just watching somebody else's life going by. You can actually connect to your own life.
My name's Rosaria Barreto, and thank you so much for listening to How to Age Well. If you've enjoyed the podcast, I'd really appreciate it if you could take a moment to leave a review. Your feedback means so much and helps others to find out about how to age well.